We are recording.
Hello.
Welcome back. Episode 5.
We did it. We're a whole handful.
Just in time for Thanksgiving.
Gobble, gobble.
It's,
I don't know why I said that.
hey, we should leave it in.
No, it has to.
We have to leave it in.
And we're going to go straight to the music now and intro. Welcome to the Kinetik Creators podcast, where we break down and talk about interesting and creative happenings, events, and news. I'm Simon.
And I'm Robert. Thanks for joining us today. We have a lot of things to talk about and break down for you, so let's get started. First thing this week is SNL.
Yeah, a lot of big announcements going on in the world and the country. Might have heard about this little election that's happened or is still happening as of time we're recording it, and probably by the time you're listening to it, but election day is the new Groundhog Day. But that's neither here or there. No big event is above a little
SNL.
lampooning and SNL show and tell, or SNL. Like, is an event historic if SNL doesn't do a skit about it? And so the answer to that is no, because SNL started their episode with a cold open featuring, Alec Baldwin as President Trump, Jim Carrey, Joe Biden, and Kamala Harris, portrayed by Maya Rudolph. And what's very notable about that is just like how they replicated Kamala's iconic, or now iconic, white business dress suit, pantsuit. A very important outfit because of the homage to women's suffrage that Kamala, being the first female vice president, and all of the historical baggage that I'm sure you're aware of, and I don't need to be the one to explain to you. But yeah, this was a big deal, and SNL wanted to start their show off of like the big story, and they had to replicate that specific suit. Problem is, SNL's a live show, and it's Saturday night live, and that they're referencing something that happened Saturday afternoon when all the stores are already closed. And so basically what was interesting about this whole setup was how SNL had like 85 minutes to create this, recreate this suit without shopping, and basically scrapping together what they had already in wardrobe and their other creative departments to recreate this look.
Yeah, and what's nuts is that they didn't know, nobody knows, right? You don't know that she's going to be wearing that when she goes on stage. So Saturday night, they do this, they do their victory speech, I guess, Kamala and Biden. Yeah. Thank you.
The other guy.
Yeah. The other guy. And, so they get up there, and literally, I think they went on stage at 8 p.m. Eastern, if I remember correctly.
Sounds right.
Or 9 p.m. I think it was actually 9 p.m. now that I think about it. And literally an hour, 2.5 hours later, they have the exact suit on Maya Rudolph to do this. And this just blows my mind. And, there's a whole series of videos on SNL's YouTube channel about how they do what they do. And if you ever have a solid 2 or 3 hours to go watch them all, it is crazy just the level of execution that this team, and they, of course they've had 30 years of experience, or more than that now, probably 40, 50 years of experience almost doing this. But it just speaks to kind of how they're able to react so well in live time, where they're sitting there taking screenshots of Kamala Harris on stage, sending them to their costume department, and everybody in their costume department is working on individual pieces of this outfit and building it and getting it ready to put on Maya Rudolph literally 5 minutes before 11:30 p.m.
Yeah, again, that team effort, that commitment to excellence, and how delegation kind of really saved the day for this one. kind of like deliberate actions or like deliberate assignments. So like you are gonna tackle on making sure you are in charge of like making sure this the blouse we have, or replicating this blouse, or so and so is this group of people are in charge of like tailoring this suit we have from a previous sketch and kind of like tailoring it to now look like this suit.
Taking a double-breasted suit and making it single-breasted.
Oh man,
which is, from what I understand, is basically reworking the entire suit.
Yeah, that's an entirely. You're basically making a whole new jacket.
Yeah.
But yeah, SNL. Love or hate their sketches, you have to appreciate like the craftsmanship that goes into
absolutely
building like not only just like the costumes, but like the sets that you have to build, and they have like some of their sketches are just like very cinematic. It's just a really cool look at what it takes to build a team or have that kind of team win.
It makes me wonder, and I have wondered this on a number of occasions about SNL and various other organizations, because it's like whether or not I would even be like able to cope in that kind of environment. You know what I mean?
Oh yeah.
Like I just think about like just the amount of work that they have to do and the amount of detail and the amount of just ingenuity and creativity that it takes to get the things done that they do. Because sometimes they literally shoot these giant cinematic sequences in like 18 hours.
Yeah.
Right. Or they've rewritten the entire script for this sketch and, after their dress rehearsal. Right. Like that is, and it's just like, would I have what it takes to function in that kind of environment?
Yeah.
In that kind of like super intense environment. And man, I don't know that I would, but I certainly can appreciate when they do, and that the creative people behind SNL, like, man, they don't get enough credit. They probably don't get paid enough.
Yeah. Those behind the scenes people, it's like talking about that environment. It's like part newsroom and all of those like deadlines and being on top of like the stories and what's going on, and like at least being factual enough to like get your jokes right.
Yep.
Then the writer's room and constantly being aware of like what's working, what's not working, being able to like adjust and pivot there, and the different directors. So kind of like if one sketch needs more time, then that's you're cutting into like another director, and so you're probably going to have to pivot and adjust deadlines and expectations off of just any number of things that goes into like building and creating a live news, improv, comedy
right
special.
Yeah, absolutely. It's pretty incredible. Have you actually watched the sketch?
I watched the sketch. Yes.
I have not.
Yeah,
I did. I was bad at doing research for this part.
I watched it for the research, so we did it.
Okay.
The podcast has seen the
Close
sketch.
Enough.
But there's a natural segue from SNL and the vice presidency to what we're our next topic. I guess the serious version of it.
Yeah. So the seriously something. I don't know. There's a segue there somewhere. You're better at segues than I am. Basically, so they announced, they kind of claimed victory, right? And all of that is ongoing. But the Biden-Harris transition team launched a website called buildbackbetter.com.
Say that 3 times fast real quick.
Build back better, build back better, build back better.
.com.
And it's a fairly like typical website. I mean, I think there's a lot of people who are really excited about it for the depth of the information, all this kind of thing. But one thing that has really stood out to a lot of people is they have a page on this website specifically dedicated to accessibility. And if you're not familiar like with web accessibility, basically what that is kind of making a website accessible, usable, understandable to as many people as possible. So even people who have vision problems or have motor impairment, things like that. And so like there are certain technologies and assistive technologies that we have and that we have developed that can help you use websites and apps and things, but your website has to be built and designed in such a way that it makes those things usable. And the Biden-Harris team has made a very intentional statement and kind of emphasis towards accessibility. Specifically, they're going off of the WCAG, which is Web Content Accessibility Guidelines, level AA criteria, which there are certain levels of criteria, single, double, and AAA. AAA being like the most stringent, specifically with things like text contrast. So if you ever visit a website, you have really light gray text, that is not accessible, because if you have vision impairment or if you have color blindness or something like that, you probably can't read that text. And so, they have made this kind of level of commitment to this, at least at a minimum AA criteria, which is kind of that middle of the road, kind of hitting as many of these pillars as possible for, being able to read text, being able to see like form fields and buttons, and being able to use it. So if you use a screen reader, and the screen reader basically reads down a web page from top to bottom, that screen reader is accurate and is able to see and tell you exactly what's on the page.
Yeah, I thought that was one really cool. Just seeing just like the little choices that that can often be taken for granted when it comes to like just doing something as simple as visiting a website and trying to like get a better understanding on like the not candidates but president-elect and just the administration and the team and what they're about and what they're going for. And I thought interesting enough, like while going on this website on just to get a better feel for what we were about to talk about, I thought it was like very clean, and just like how they didn't really lose anything in terms of like aesthetics or
story they're trying to tell.
But it's all very, it all works together really well. But saying while I was doing that, it took me a second to realize that I was looking at the screen or on all the pages with my with my dark light, not my dark light filter, with my dark reader on. So basically night mode.
Yep.
And so that kind of like changed my initial way into the website. But it's funny enough, I guess just my default was one of their options that they already have. Because just going on the website on to the left of the screen, you have the option to like do that high contrast mode to make it day for night, or if you're someone like me and you turn your night mode off and you're just bombarded by just the brightness, you can never fear. You don't have to deal with that and risk losing out on information. And you can also toggle the font size, make it larger and more readable.
Fun fact, white text, so this high contrast mode Simon's talking about is basically inverts the website, so it goes from blue and white and to like a black background or with white text and gold text or gold links, and white on black text or white text on black background is actually easier for people with dyslexia to read. So not only is it better, so if you have a vision problem and you need really high contrast to be able to pick out those letters, it can also be easier if you have dyslexia to understand the letter forms and see the text on the screen. So it's a really nice attention to detail. And I think, shows kind of even just from a, policy perspective, like their commitment to making sure people have able to access and understand the information. And I believe it's somewhere around the ballpark of 10 to 12% of Americans have some kind of disability that makes it harder to use a website. So you think about that in terms of sheer numbers, and that's 3 to 5 million people in the United States who otherwise would have no access to this information, who have no access to understanding what's happening. And, you know, if you think like, you know, if this will carry over into the actual administration as well, you know, what is that going to do for at least bringing, you know, some semblance of transparency and understanding to this process, and or into the processes and the things that they're doing, and the things that they care about.
Just like in the same similar vein of what you were just saying, like the idea of making things more accessible, you're kind of left facing two questions, like who am I making this for, and what do they need, and then or who's on the other side, who's not using this, and why aren't they able to get to it?
Absolutely. Yeah, and I think like that speaks even to kind of the idea of UX, you know, user experience, that we often look at user experience as like, you know, this thing that is supposed to help, you know, increase conversion rate or to make it easier to do things. But even at the end of the day, it's just a tool to help ensure that everyone can use your thing. You know, accessibility is a function of user experience. And, yeah, I think that's I think it would do well for more people to think that way when they build websites or design products. Certainly something that I try to think of when I design things and build things, because it can be very hard and can be somewhat limiting, or it feels like it can be limiting, especially when you're limited to essentially there is a color contrast ratio, which is the place where this most shows up, where you need to have a certain contrast between your text and your background. And that's usually like a very dark color, and that doesn't always look great, you know, depending on what you're doing. And so it can be somewhat limiting sometimes, but I think that usually, especially in a situation like this, you know, the pros of doing so far outweigh the cons of not doing it, or any design or stylistic choices that you might be making, or feel like you're sacrificing on.
Yeah. So, just thinking about what you were saying about like UX being more than just like making things more efficient, but it's also just, you know, in a way kind of being more empathetic and just like being in someone else's shoes. And remember, just reminded me of like a text I sent you like a couple of weeks ago about just like trying to, my kid woke up earlier than normal, and he was like very upset, and I was trying to like figure out, all right, what's going on in this room? Like, right. And I literally had the question, what's your UX right now? Like, is the fan blowing on your face? Did I not notice that? Because like, I'm a lot higher than the crib is. And it's like, but yeah, just like little things like that, just kind of like stepping into the other person's shoes and kind of like getting a feel for what they're needing or what they're experiencing. And also, just thinking about in terms of like things that are accessible, it's like, you know, Joe Biden kind of checks the boxes for two things. He's like, he's very elderly. I think he's the oldest president we've ever had, or one of them.
Yes, yeah, I think that's right.
And so, you know, like little things like, you know, larger text on screens, like that's probably more of the forefront of his mind. And and as a person with a stutter and who just needs that extra bit of time to just process information, I just think those personal background experiences, I don't know what's going in his head, and he's not the guy who actually built this website, right? But it does, you know, make me think about just like how we can use our own personal experiences to then look for opportunities to like cater to other people's experiences and needs.
Absolutely. Well,
little PSA of the podcast, but yes. But speaking of
accessibility, think about it.
Pass it on. But speaking of acronyms, PSA, B and B.
It's close.
It's close.
We'll
I was thinking Airbnb. So,
yeah. So Airbnb, as I'm sure many people are aware, you're not going to Airbnbs right now due to the pandemic.
Gasp.
Most people are not looking to do a lot of traveling right now. So Airbnb, at the end of October, actually announced that they are going to be partnering with a very specific designer to redesign and develop new products and services, and kind of, I believe, in some ways, redesign the company a little bit.
Oh,
and that is Airbnb is partnered with Joni Ive, and if you're not familiar with who he is specifically, you probably heard his mellifluous British voice doing voiceovers for Apple products.
I think I've heard of them.
He used to be the chief design officer at Apple. He was there for 30 years, I believe, or almost. And in 2019, something like that, he left Apple to start his own design agency called Love From. And he's, I guess, Airbnb. I know that Love From works with Apple quite frequently, but this is going to be one of their more high profile new clients in Airbnb. So interesting to see, and interesting. I'm curious to see what they will do, specifically because of how Airbnb came about. And how they kind of have this like mentality of like kind of typical startup culture where it's like move fast and break things, solve problems that you have yourself. And this feels like they're trying to go in a fairly different direction, at least in terms of like a early startup, which Airbnb has tended to act like. And now this feels like a more mature kind of evolution in what they're doing. I think I'm just curious to see what they're going to do and what they end up making happen.
Yeah, it's interesting what you were just saying. Just the idea of like maturation of a business. You usually think of like, that kind of growth and just being reserved for only like, individuals as they're like taking on more experiences or have more life. And they'll just like, they'll learn more. They'll be like, just older and wiser.
Yeah.
But we, kind of forget like brands are, made up of individuals. And so, as people grow, as the world changes, brands should do the same. It's very hard to see it's very hard for a brand or business or any organization to, be steadfast and resolute and without evolving or adapting over time. You need that kind of flexibility to kind of like adjust and be relevant towards the needs of like the people you're trying to have a relationship with.
Absolutely. Yeah. And even just like, you're talking about that relationship, like, that's what Brian Chesky, who's the CEO at Airbnb, that's what he is kind of touting here with this very significant design partnership, is that, design, has this kind of power to develop relationship and facilitate trust and facilitate connection. And I think that what they're trying or hoping to do is to really begin that process of saying, what does the next level of Airbnb look like? And what does the next level of human connection as it relates to, I would imagine, some kind of traveling experiences and kind of like even a digital domain? Like, what is that going to look like? Especially, this year, like with COVID, like none of us or very few of us are traveling. Certainly fewer of us are traveling for leisure, especially internationally, which is, kind of the main draw of Airbnb. And suddenly, I think like they're looking at that and going, oh crap, like I think they had to lay off like a third of their workforce.
Ouch.
And it had real business implications. And so I think that they're looking at this and going, we want to build a company that is not just reliant on this one area, and that is reliant and sustainable and resilient through all these other areas. And I think this really demonstrates that pivot that they're making to invest in that. And it's also very interesting to me as well, because Airbnb is usually touted as having one of the best design teams in the world. So I'm curious to understand, and obviously Joni Ive is huge, and he's, he led iPod development, he led iPhone development, he led the development of iOS 14. He was very influential at Apple and one of the most influential designers probably to ever live at this point. but what is he going to bring to the table that they don't already have in house? And how is that going to impact what they do have in house? And I think that will be, I do believe there will be some kind of almost status quo set by that in terms of what design in these startups is going to look like moving forward.
Yeah, I really love that quote you just said. It was like, design can facilitate trust and enable more human connection. Mm-hmm. Yeah, I think that's just very powerful and just like a really cool way to approach or view your craft as a way to kind of just like serve others and kind of just, or rather than treating your craft as something as a way to like serve and cater towards others, or it's rather than like building your own platform for just self-focused goals.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think that kind of mindset is kind of like what because you said he was part of Apple, right?
Yes.
Yeah, that idea is kind of what separates the good from the great and the great from legendary. Mm-hmm. And just thinking deeper or thinking differently.
Yep.
And there's no company that kind of models and illustrates that quite like Apple. Mm-hmm. And no, there's nobody that can talk about Apple like Apple.
Right.
Or us, who are about to talk about Apple, talking about Apple anyway. In their Apple events.
Oh man, that segue! I didn't even see that segue coming, and I knew what we were going to next. Yes. Holy crap, that was nuts, dude! I'm like, I don't know. I might need a minute now. Anyway, so the Apple event. So, in addition to, of course, COVID disrupting many travel plans, COVID also has disrupted how Apple normally runs their events. They're normally these in-person keynotes. They have hundreds of people who come to them. They're normally even, of course, across the course of a week, especially when it relates to Worldwide Developer Conference, which happens in June. And they couldn't do that this year. So starting in June, they actually developed a new way of doing these virtual keynotes, and they are pre-recorded videos of the same, I would imagine the same presenters who would be doing it live, the same slides, the same content, but it's all around kind of the Apple campus, the Apple Park as it's known. And they've been doing these keynotes, and one of the things that has really just kind of come to the front after every one of these keynotes, and they've done 4 now, with the last one being was it November 10th, I think, was the Tuesday that it was. Just seeing like the quality and the cinematography in these events has been astounding to many people.
It's a visual feast,
and it is. I mean, obviously they build great products, but just the way the cinematography works and the way these shots are framed, it's it's impressive to say the least.
Yeah, just looking through the just some snippets of this video, it's like really cool to see, like, I guess just looking at the details of like these beautiful shots. It's like, it's very smooth, clean camera movements and in very smooth, clean environments, but it's just, you still have like elements of like nature, and obviously the speakers are humans talking to humans and kind of trying to make up for that lack of human interaction of these traditional keynote events, and where you would be able to feel or kind of like feed off of like crowd reaction in anticipation.
Yeah.
But here, I think it's just really cool how Apple is kind of, there's no pun intended, like combining the organic with the technical, and how that's really just obviously part of their identity as like, literally a tech company named Apple, named after a fruit.
Yep.
But it's just, it plays off of the idea of wanting to, or I guess just leaning into what makes them unique and what makes them, think differently and be, continuously relevant, as even though the times and circumstances that their products are existing in, their Apple's still finding a way to be relevant and really show not only that their products are worth having, but they also make you feel like this is something that is just really cool.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, and one of the things like that just continues to stand out to me is just like the technical execution of these. Like, it's almost like some of these, and I'm sure some of it might be rendered, but it almost looks like the whole thing is rendered.
Yeah, like right? You're a cutscene,
like it's like a cutscene in a video game, or like a super high quality Pixar movie. And especially they have these rooms where they have these massive floor to ceiling screens. Some of them are curved. And they are, they have a guy standing in front of them or a presenter standing in front of them. And those screens are not added in post. It's not like they're green screens and then they've, added the graphics and the images and the videos and everything in post. They have exposed perfectly for the room. Sometimes a room that has outside lighting, indoor lighting, and this screen lighting.
And this is a white room, which is not an easy thing to kind of like expose for.
Yeah, absolutely. And then they have a person in the foreground and they have like, the outside in the background. And it's just like that level, like just being able to create these things and being able to do this is just like, it speaks to how Apple does. And man, I want them to do more simply so that I can just watch like the cinematography. Like if they just did this as like a cinematography, like tour of the campus or something, like I would love that.
Yeah, you were showing this to me like a few minutes ago before this would have made into the podcast, and just like seeing like the first drone shot of over the park, Apple Park, and just all of the other camera movements and the transition, how they transition from one keynote room to another is just, it's very precise, but it doesn't feel rigid or mechanical. It feels very lively and very, live, but also still very polished. It's, right. Yeah.
It in some ways almost feels like you're being given a tour, and they're like, oh, and here's where we make these chips, and here's where we put together the MacBooks, and, here's like, here's, Craig Federici, he's, the SVP of product or whatever, like whatever, like, and you're kind of walking through and like, you're just kind of being handed off from one tour guide to the other. And that is a very hard thing to do. And it honestly makes me wish that more companies did stuff like this, because it also shows a little bit more of the people behind the products, where you get like actual product managers who work on the MacBook. You get actual software engineers. You get these people who aren't just like C-suite level people who are working on these products. And it's really very truly like a human company. And obviously there are many things that we can critique and say about Apple and it's too expensive and, this, that, and the other. But yeah, they truly do really care about like the products they're making and the people behind them.
Yeah, I think what you were just saying is just like how they are highlighting the behind the scenes people. I think that's I guess just learning from like Steve Wozniak and just how that and like how Apple was very, for the longest time, just like, Steve Jobs is Apple, but like over it's been over a decade now, almost.
Yeah, I think 2011, so almost 10 years that he's been gone.
Yeah, that long. And again, we're talking about like, being able to pivot and adapt and evolve over time. And I guess one of the best ways to test the longevity is like, how does a brand, a business, organization last past beyond its leader? And I think obviously building something bigger than individual, but also taking time to like highlight and show like the value of the individuals that kind of make this up. It just leads to a really cool cohesive thing that becomes more attractive for people to want to be a part of.
Yeah, absolutely.
And this is said by a guy with 0 Apple products. But yeah.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Another live shopping news.
Oh yeah. Another big deal. Or another day of big deals.
Another big day of big deals. Have you heard of Singles Day?
Tell me more.
Singles Day was created by Alibaba. Is basically the Chinese Amazon. Well, I say the Chinese Amazon, but they're like 15 times as big as Amazon or whatever. I mean, they're huge.
Wow.
And it was founded by Jack Ma, who's one of the richest men in the world, if not the richest man in the world. They created a holiday. I'm gonna say holiday in very large air quotes because it's basically created as the anti-Valentine's Day. So all you single people out there, it's for you. They created Singles Day, and they made it on November 11th because it's all ones.
The loneliest number.
The loneliest number, that's right. And it is also the largest, I believe, the single largest shopping day in China.
Bruh.
Which is the largest country in the world, of course.
So yeah,
it's a big deal. I have some stats here. Let me see if I can find the stats that I had, because I think it's very difficult to understand exactly like what the scope of this is. Okay, so here we go. It's China's Singles Day. It was on November 11th, and they basically, so last year, it's a 24-hour online shopping event. Last year, they had 1.9 billion products ordered and delivered in one day. They didn't deliver them in one day, but 1.9 billion products ordered in one day.
Bruh.
One of the things that makes this day so attractive is they have developed, I don't know if I believe it's a proprietary app through Alibaba that is basically Twitch meets TikTok meets QVC or Home Shopping Network or whatever you want to call it. It's basically what they call live stream shopping. And yeah, I know it's not really new. But when you look at the app and the way it interacts, and you see like, okay, there are these people that are presenting these products, and then there are people who are chatting back at them in real time. You can see what other people are buying in real time. You can see what's popular real time. It's almost like this shoppingtainment, you know?
Yeah.
And it is really truly something. China Singles Day is also meant kind of, as far as I'm aware, at least this year, is being seen as kind of a marker of how China's GDP is doing, especially in light of COVID. And this year in particular, they hired an additional 3 million people.
They hired a country's worth of people.
I mean, essentially. And they hired an extra 4,000 planes and ships to handle this crazy influx of orders and all of it. It's just a logistical, like, amazing logistical, innovation, in addition to being something very, very culturally innovating, I guess, simply even just because of like the way they're using mobile technologies, especially because I think it's a very large percentage of transactions in China are done on your phone. Like their phone is their computer. Yeah,
that makes sense.
It's nuts. It's really, really nuts.
Yeah, if we had video for this podcast, you would have seen just my mouth like agape for like however long Robert was just explaining all of Singles Day. It's like, and this is not my first time hearing about it, but I'm still like flabbergasted by the holiday and everything that goes in. Yeah,
everything that goes into playing it.
It's just really fascinating how, because it sounds like it can easily be just dismissed as a gimmick holiday, like, like even you're saying it's like the singles version of Valentine's Day, and like Valentine's Day is, among the holidays isn't like the most revered. It's
looking at you, Arbor Day.
I'm not the first person to say like it's a great day to just make money selling cards, candies, flowers, and chocolate. What? I mean, no, I do these things because never mind. I love you. I don't even know if she's probably listening. This is gonna be.
We're gonna leave that one in.
That's. This is the episode where I bring the shovel. But I guess while I'm digging, I just think it's also very fascinating and kind of ironic that like China has like kind of like out American and out capitalism us with this holiday.
Oh, for sure.
It's like, wow.
I mean, yeah, I mean, and that's, I mean, we could probably do a whole episode about the intricacies of China.
We already have two political topics on here.
Not that either of us are geopolitical experts, but
that has never stopped people on Facebook before.
Oh, shots fired. And this is, where was I even going with that? I don't even know what I was saying. This segment is turning into quite the
derailed.
Hey, that's okay. Everything happens for a reason.
We are here.
We're trying.
So Singles Day. Sorry,
I don't remember what I was saying. It's gone. Something about how big the market. Oh yeah, so like there's such a big market.
Yes.
Yeah, you have NBA, you have all of these major like American companies essentially bowing down to a lot of things, and we could spend a whole episode talking about China,
every Transformers movie,
geopolitical, implications of what they do, but they have really done something interesting here that actually ties very well into our next topic, even, which is about Instagram. And as of the recording, I have gotten this, but maybe you have or have not. But Instagram has released a new design, not like an aesthetic design, but kind of a reshuffling of the structure of the app, where they have, traditionally in the bottom, that main navigation in the bottom of the app, you'd have the home, the search, your create, your notifications, and your profile. And they have now moved create and notifications up to the top of the home screen.
Yeah, I see that now. I'm opening Instagram up for I think it must have been the first time today, because like I'm seeing all these new features like you were just talking about, like the home button, home, search, reel, shopping, and profile, all listed out on the bottom, and then wow.
Yep. And so, this also, as with most things, has kind of split opinions of a lot of people being like, oh, that's such a bad move.
People are upset for a Facebook-related product changing its design? What? No way.
We're going to do like a really salty episode about all the redesigns. But this is actually pretty interesting. And the reason that I think this is interesting, especially as it relates to Singles Day, is that they moved their shopping section more to more of a prominent area. And that has now replaced notifications, which most people check Instagram to see their notifications. So there's probably going to be a lot of habit clicking into shop, right?
Ooh.
And I think this is really this indicates a very interesting shift both for Instagram and of course for Facebook in terms of what they're thinking about with product strategy with Instagram. Is that Instagram increasingly is becoming a user-generated content platform for brands to sell products.
Oh yeah,
right. Like they introduced shoppable posts a long time ago where you could tag a product and you could go straight into that store. They've now introduced native Facebook checkout that integrates with a lot of e-commerce platforms. So you literally don't even have to leave the app to buy something now. And I think this is just showing that evolution of Instagram as to being more and more interested in both live things with kind of that Reels-like experience and that shopping thing, which I think eventually we're going to see this evolution into something very similar to what Singles Day is looking like with these live shopping apps. And I think we're going to, get there eventually. I think it'll still take a couple years. But in terms of what Instagram is doing here, they're kind of laying the groundwork for making that happen. And for the product to be better positioned for that in the future as, our wants and needs and usage of the app changes. Yeah,
I think among many things, one of the aspects of this redesign I think is really we say interesting all the time, but I think it's very interesting that Spotify, Instagram has expanded its shopping or its shopping presence on the app.
Mm-hmm.
So I guess on the one hand, I wonder if that means our normal timelines will be more ad free,
Mm-hmm.
or if that'll be or if that might even expand more as more and more people see this new feature as an opportunity to really invest more in. I keep wanting to say Spotify. Because Shopify, that's why, because of increasing their shopping and selling online retail presence on Instagram.
Absolutely. I think, I and you bringing up that ad thing is something I hadn't even really considered. I would hope it would. I don't know that it will, but I hope it would. But even as I was just clicking through, the shop tab now even has a full like orders and history and wish list features.
Ooh.
And the thing that's really interesting about this that actually maybe a lot of people don't know is that will probably work regardless of what product line or company it is. So you could literally add multiple products from different companies to one cart or one order and be able to get them all delivered to you. And that in of itself is a very interesting kind of prospect where you suddenly don't have to go to XYZ, websites to buy your favorite products. You can do it all in one app. And that's, why everybody will always say that Amazon has eaten everyone else's lunch, is because they have done that, and they have done that in a way that some would say is predatory. But even, looking at this right here, it's like, it's really more of an aggregator more than it is an actual like taking over your products or your business. It's really more of a content or product aggregator.
Yeah. And I guess going back to, two ideas. The first being the idea of pivoting, especially in like this the pandemic, is just that you're seeing an increase of like online stores, and like that's kind of like where the mom and pop stores that may have closed their physical locations. A lot of them are surviving because of online sales, and because of Instagram's very community or very interest focused tailoring and marketing. It's going to be very easy to kind of just like see the products you want. They're very good at that. Too good at that. I just opened the shopping section now. I was like, I do need Fear of God shoes. I don't need Fear of God shoes, but I'm a size 10.5 and I need Fear of God shoes. But this is this evolution of Instagram is also kind of like a really interesting illustration about just like how shopping is becoming more and more personalized and accessible over time. We were talking about Singles Day just earlier, just like how it's just a big event, how they kind of centralized all of the shopping to like kind of like take place on your phone, and it has like this really big shoppingtainment aesthetic, kind of like combining the streaming excitement and connection and interest that Twitch has, or I barely know how TikTok works, but yeah, just combining and pulling from these successful social media platforms and models, and kind of like connecting them to what really matters most. Sure. Money,
spending money,
and connections. And
mostly money though.
Oh yeah, yeah. Don't hate the player of the game. This is the rules have changed a little bit, so pivot and adjust accordingly.
That's right.
So yeah,
gotta pivot. Another shopping news. We actually have two. A little bit outside the norm for us is two retail store redesigns this week. So Rite Aid. Being the first one, they announced a new they released this logo I think back in like March. So they redesigned the logo, they launched, and this week they announced a new retail store design. And they're making these more kind of like a whole health community kind of store instead of a drugstore or a pharmacy that we would normally think about. That is, for some reason they all have that like weird gray carpet. They all have like the same fluorescent lighting. They all have the same weird smell, and they're like, sorry, I don't hate pharmacies or anything. These are things I notice. But like they're basically doing away with all of that look. And Rite Aid in particular has had a very dated look and very dated feel for a long time. And they have announced what they are calling their RX evolution strategy. And basically like they're looking to treat the whole health of your body, mind, and spirit, whole health destination. And they're combining these physical retail store designs with the new kind of digital experience and what they call the store of the future. So yeah, it's kind of interesting. The new stores look very clean, very modern. They look more like almost like a showroom than they do a drugstore, which I guess is kind of the point. But I can definitely see the point of this, and the intention of this is where, when it comes to healthcare, like that's usually something a lot of people don't like to think about and they don't like to talk about. And it can be stressful and anxiety inducing, especially in the United States, especially as it relates to money. And by taking a more friendly, kind of open, kind of welcoming approach, I think they're hoping to kind of begin to break down that barrier, especially as it relates to, pharmacists, where you are talking about, drugs and prescriptions and, very complicated things that can go along with that. Or, I have this weird pain, or I have my allergies or things, and I'm not sure why. And I just need something to help make it happen or make it go away, really. And also, even with that, like a lot of pharmacists and these, pharmacy chains are going to more minute clinic style. So, you can go to CVS and get a flu shot. You can go to almost any drugstore and get a COVID test. You're getting more and more of these kind of minute clinic style experiences where you don't have to go to your normal doctor. It doesn't cost a copay. It's $30 or $40, and I think this is kind of their attempt to begin to get ahead of that for Rite Aid and to begin to create that better experience, especially as it relates to kind of these smaller community stores.
Yeah, I think along with what you were just talking about, like the Rite Aid being the store of the future, how they're trying to rebrand themselves, is kind of like changing our present image, or at least my present image of pharmacies, of like, sure, being like that old dusty place. But it's like, yeah, I always just kind of pictured like pharmacies as, place for like grandma, grandpa to like pick up their pills to, keep chugging along and keep like maintaining their health. But health doesn't just begin once you have your AARP card. It's like it's a relevant and important aspect of our lives. And having a more holistic and complete look at having a healthy life, that does take a lot more effort on, I don't want to say the consumer, but just like the individual. And I think it's really just really nice, really neat that Rite Aid has like taken notice of that, and they're really trying to make themselves, just making something as daunting or dusty as health and maintaining health, and making that more accessible to not just younger people, but just like, again, anyone.
Yeah.
Going through their website and just seeing like how they're just, even like their categories that they're highlighting, it's not just like, prescriptions. They're talking about obviously the pharmacy, but they have emphasis on beauty and groceries, and like, those day-to-day things that matter for our health and well-being. Then diet, fitness, personal care,
Yeah.
And interesting enough, at the very end, sexual health, important.
Yes.
But also at the very end, they have a clearance section, which, that's also that also matters.
Yes.
Get that mini hand sanitizer bottles at a budget.
Get those coupons.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, and one of the things, and I think, healthcare nerd over here could probably talk about this for a long time, but we're also seeing more of a shift in the way healthcare delivery is happening, where it's less about treating symptoms, which is, you go to the pharmacy to get high blood pressure medication. Well, there's a pretty good chance that you didn't have high blood pressure 20 years ago. Depending on your age, of course, that's a possibility, but it's not usually a naturally occurring thing. It can be genetic, but you probably ate wrong. You probably didn't exercise enough. You have congestive heart failure. Like there can be, diabetes. Any number of these things can be, related to the whole health in terms of nutrition and exercise and sleep. And goodness gracious, sleep impacts so much. Mm-hmm. And so Rite Aid now focusing on these things, I would imagine, is going to be reflected even in the greater kind of pharmacy healthcare industry of saying, like, we're going to treat the whole person and not just the symptoms, which, like you're saying, where, you tend to think about going to the pharmacy to get 19 bottles of pills because you have, 35 different things that are wrong with you. That is no longer the case as they see it. And that should be kind of somewhat secondary to going in to make sure that you are, getting the right sleep, having immunity, getting, the right healthy products or supplements or whatever that might be.
Yeah. If you're listening now, fix your posture, unclench your jaw. Are you drinking water? Are you drinking enough water?
You can now feel your tongue in your mouth.
Yeah.
Last thing for today.
You were just saying earlier that Rite Aid wasn't the only store we're going to talk about in terms of redesigns and kind of just creating a whole newer, fresher look. Target, it's going to be our second store. And, Target, which might be surprising because Target isn't necessarily known for being like a dusty old store that needs a drastic or dramatic change. Unless, something did happen. And so, if you've been paying attention to the news or past year or a few months, a lot of things have happened, especially in Targets have been targeted for, I guess, the need for redesigns. Okay, so, and what I'm referencing are the Target in Minneapolis and in the aftermath of the George Floyd protest and a lot of the violence that happened in those communities that we saw protesting. There was a lot of reports of looting, and one of the images that sticks out for a lot of people is the Target in Minneapolis. And even closer to home, there was a Target in Buckhead, Atlanta, that got hit hard by just destruction and all of the madness that comes with these unpleasant and just these unfortunate elements of protesting that happens sometimes. But good news is those Targets are they're back. They're better than ever. And not just to be like, not in like a facetious like shame on you for caring, but I think it is very interesting that Target has not only reopened, but they took the time to kind of take this as a learning opportunity. Mm-hmm. And so what they did was they obviously, just said earlier, they redesigned, but hold on, I'll back up. Yeah, what they did was they redesigned, and some of the changes they did were, making things more accessible, which again, reoccurring theme we've talked about today, making the pharmacy more accessible by moving it to the front. They expanded their food and beverage section, and expanded assortment of like categories and beauty and toys and so forth and other things that people in the community need. And I think or part of, or the reason these things are like highlighted as part of the redesign and the reopening and the change, the pivot that Target took for these two locations in particular was because of their partnership with a design, I think is it a design agency?
I think they were contracting.
Yes, a contracting company, Noor, Noor. But they are a company that's focused on like social benefit, and so they're kind of like bridge the gap between the obviously corporate needs and corporate interests, but also catering and serving and meeting the needs of people in the community that are a part of it. Mm-hmm. And a lot of heated discussion and debate has kind of like obviously like circulated among the Black Lives Matters movement and rhetoric and protest and the proper way to protest and improper way to protest, and like how do corporations get involved, or is it better to just put up a black square and say nothing at all, or just carry on as business as usual, and all of these confusing or just a lot of there's rarely a right answer, but there's a lot of wrong answers. And so I think it's interesting that the approach Target took to work with this company to just redesign their stores, and what we were saying earlier about design being a way to kind of just build trust and empathy with between people. I think that's kind of being shown here.
And I think one of the interesting things with this too, we were talking about UX being empathy earlier. Mm-hmm. And I mean, that's in a lot of ways, that's a lot of what Target has done here mm-hmm. in their process to listen to the community, to, create pieces of this experience for this store mm-hmm. that are very different than what you might find in another store. And maybe they're not even like drastically different. They're not like new mm-hmm. like features, right? They're not new services. But they are intentionally designed to be more accessible. One of the things we were talking about that they did was that they made the pharmacy more accessible to the front door, so that the elderly don't have to walk as far, right? They have an additional entrance. They have a larger kind of grocery section. And they've kind of done all these things with the intention that they're going to serve this community better. And even going so far as to make sure like, hey, like we kind of neglected the way this store looked and, mm-hmm. and the way it was cleaned and all these things. And so, they've really, I think, they've kind of listened and kind of implemented a lot of these pieces of feedback based on what the community and the customers were looking for.
Yeah. I think, what you were just saying, like how they were able to kind of like take in that feedback from the community to kind of like step up and be better for the people they're wanting to have a relationship. And obviously, every business wants like that financial relationship here. But I think it's really cool like how Target and this, what are they, an agency?
Contracting company.
Contracting company. Were able to kind of just not necessarily just like make these changes, but kind of like get a better finger on the pulse of like, what do people need? What are people thinking about us? And what can we do about it? Mm-hmm. You're talking about like their how they made their stores cleaner, and how that the pharmacy is moved up front. These were these all came from direct being put in a position where they can receive direct feedback.
Yeah,
and I think that's on one hand we could just chalk this up to good PR, but I also think this is a good learning opportunity for not just like Target, but for really anybody that's mm-hmm. making anything.
Yeah.
To really put put ourselves in a position to really ask those design questions. What are the problems, and what are the problems that we can actually solve? Target. What's put in the spotlight for in the background of all of this like social justice and civic unrest, and like they can't solve all of those problems, but what they can do is create a better experience for the people in those communities.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not a mom and pop store like in the traditional store sense, but it is, or any I guess kind of sense, but it is a place where like people in your community, neighbors go, and they were affected by the store being closed down. And so part of what I guess helps making this step forward, or this attempt to kind of just bridge the gap between corporation and community, was done through creativity and through design and creative problem solving, and trying to really put ourselves in the perspective of seeing what people are experiencing and seeing what people are needing, and kind of figuring out the question like what are the problems that we can solve, who's here and what do they need, who's not here and what's stopping them from showing up. And yeah,
absolutely. That's all we have for you this week. We appreciate you hanging around. If you like what we're doing, subscribe and review us on your podcast app and tell your friends. If you want to chime in or share something you think we should talk about, email us at kinetikcreators@gmail.com. That's KINETIK creators@gmail.com. Until next time, peace.